Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. This is how to establish metrics and KPIs for every position in your practice. Yes?
Sorry, what's a KPI?
I was going to ask you that.
Perfect.
Yep. So I do have it here defined on the very next slide.
Awesome.
But what's a KPI? Did you hear all that mumbling? Key Performance Indicator. So the idea there is if you have hundreds of metrics and all these things that you can measure, what do you look at so that you're making the best management decisions? Right? Cool. So what are metrics and KPIs? Metrics are a tool for measuring accountability. What's the difference between accountability, responsibility, and authority? Let's go through this. Let's define accountability right now. Accounting, it has the name in it. So count, it's a person that keeps tabulation over something. They keep track of something. That's the main function. So if I'm or I'll use another example, if somebody in our office, let's say Mitch, is accountable for internal marketing, he's keeping track of it. That doesn't necessarily mean that he has authority and responsibility there. It usually means that. But accountability is very specific to keeping track of. Did I just R2D2? That's metrics. Like how many new patients did we see last week? 32, great. That's somebody's reporting that, they're accountable for that. Key performance indicator, it's the senior or top priority metrics most indicative of production and success. So the basic ones that at least I kept track of in the very beginning from day one: new patients, visits, attendance rate, income. You at least have to be keeping track of that. Does everybody in the room keep track of some sort of metric on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis? You're beyond me convincing you that that's a good idea, and now you're looking at it. But doesn't it at times become overwhelming? What do I look at? Who's accountable for what? I'm not sure what that looks like. That's the goal of this session, is that when you walk away from this person owns this area, this number. Why are metrics and KPIs important? It helps each team member be accountable and responsible for their area of production. Pretty self-explanatory, but what we're going to do in the next session is go through the entire accountability chart, and you're going to see how you're at least going to have a person owning each area. That person might be you. In particular, if you're in a smaller practice, maybe you're owning marketing, maybe you're owning financing or portions of finance, maybe you're owning something else, specifically if you're still involved in the front office or treatment. But you want one person accountable and responsible for each of your key metrics. And it allows for efficiency in management decisions. And I want to back up to how important number one is. So in the staff meeting, and this is revolutionary when you're basic. If you're more advanced like you are as an owner in this room, I still see this happening. The I told you so management, like having a staff meeting, and if you're doing the majority of the talking, how many people are in your office? What's that? 10 to 12. If you have 10 people in a staff meeting and you're running the staff meeting, percentage-wise, how much talking should you do? About 10%, okay? In a well-run meeting, you should be doing not the majority of the talking. You're not talking at your staff, telling them what happened. If people are truly owning an area, like Heather owns external marketing in our office, in the staff meeting, she's reporting what's going on there. She has a voice, okay? It's really, really key when we're talking about accountability. When somebody owns that, they're sharing with the rest of the staff what's going on. I see some like nervous smiles and then like other looks like we already knew that. Okay, so is there like a marketing initiative in there? Sure. Okay, are you giving the marketing, it's Misty, right? Are you giving Misty her rock, or is she telling you what her rock is? Well, this is where we're going. I mean, you can still say this is the picture, so this is where we're going to be at. We're going to be at, let's say, 200 visits a week is where you're going to be at Q1 goal. And this will make more sense when we have the accountability chart and the afternoon session. You'll see how this all plays together. But what happens with that is then you say, okay, what do we need to do to get there? And Misty originates that. If she really owns and is accountable for your marketing. It's so much more powerful when she owns that. You're guiding it, you're listening. There's going to be some awkward, it's really tough, Blaine, right? To not say anything, but let that person originate that. I try to do that. You can ask Heather and Mitch about that, and we've recorded those sessions, but for the most part, the person that owns it should be originating what's going to happen there, and you're guiding.
What's a rock?
A rock is a priority. We're not even doing questions yet, but I'll roll with it.
So you talked earlier about three things, the difference between
I think I might have it defined in here. If I didn't, I just wrote an article on it, and I'll get you the article. But yeah, accountability, responsibility, and authority. Three very different things that are commonly confused. Right here with metrics, we're primarily talking about accountability, which is somebody tabulating what's going on. And everybody knows is it Heisenberg or Heidelberg principle, right? The second that you begin keeping track of something, it improves. It's actually not true. So that, even though that was, the concept is true, that isn't the Heisenberg principle. And that was the name of Breaking Bad, right? That's what he renamed himself, the Walt. But anyhow, there is another name of that principle, but I don't even know what that is. So I'm not going to try to invent that right now, but I just know that's the idea, that once you begin keeping track of something and you have people owning it, and they're truly owning it, it's going to improve. So it allows for efficiency in management decisions. You can't really, everybody in the room is already keeping track of metrics, so you're just flying blind if you're thinking in ranges right now. It's really a scoreboard for the health of your practice. How many people have had a physical in the last year? I went in for one. It was $160 out of pocket. I did this 2 weeks ago. They weighed me, took my height. Surprised I haven't grown any in 20 years. But I don't know why they did that. But took my weight, took my height, did my heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure. That was the whole thing. It was $160. My doctor came in the room. He said, wow, you lost 12 pounds. You're doing really good here. Let's do some blood work, but do you have any questions for me? And I said, no. And then we talked for 20 minutes about nothing related to my health. And I was like, wow, it's just the vital, but they know that I'm more healthy or something like that, maybe. But they didn't ask me what I was doing or anything like that. So kind of weird, but it's the same idea. Those vitals are important, and that's where medicine's moving. Like if we just can look at 5 variables or 10 variables or a cluster of clinical predictors, then we can make better decisions. It's the same thing for your business. So you have a few key things that you're looking at least on a daily, at worst, a weekly basis. Like, what's the pulse of your business like? What's the scoreboard? The other key thing is, I was at a Dan Kennedy event. We were in Cleveland. I believe it was Dustin Burleson, who's an orthodontist in Kansas City. He asked this question. He said, you give advice to a ton of people. You may have heard me say this already, but you give advice to a ton of people. How do you know when that person walks out the room who's going to succeed and who's not going to implement anything that they just paid you a ton of money for? And he said, it's simple. They know their metrics. He stopped there. Somebody yelled, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, here's what I mean. If they walk in and they can tell me if they say, if I ask them what's their average cost per customer, and they say $111.13, that's a lot different than, well, kind of depends what we're doing, but it might, sometimes it's like $35 and other times it's like $500, but we don't do that anymore. And that person is not going to implement. Knowing exactly where you're at and being very specific, I am 5'8", 0, right? Knowing exactly where you're at, really, really important. Blood pressure, very specific number. Heart rate, 68. It's the same thing for your business. You want to know exactly where you are. And don't ignore that either. That's how people fly into mountains. But pay attention to what's going on there. So they know their metrics. What typically happens, a couple different stages. You probably, I don't think this is happening in the room, but you probably have heard, anybody hear another owner talk about where they're at right now and they're brand new and you're like, oh my gosh, we were there not that long ago. I can relate to that. And it's actually very, not only therapeutic, but it's good for you to go that and see how far you've come. Otherwise, you're the back pain patient who came in like this day one. Now you're laying your hands flat on the floor and you're saying, I'm not sure if I'm any better yet, right? We've all had that patient as well. You're doing that same thing, so you have some relativity there. But stage 0 is they ignore metrics, don't track it, and it's a guess. That's very much what I just illustrated for you here. Everything's a range. Average visits per new patient, 8 to 14. It depends. Depends what the diagnosis is, depends on the insurance, depends on the referral source. It depends on all these other factors, rather than saying it's 8.9. They ignore their metrics, they don't track the S. Stage 1 is, oh, that's neat. Owner tracks basic metrics for all staff, feeds to staff, here's what you did. Next stage up, owner tracks all metrics for each department, feeds to the staff. You're still feeding staff, feed me, feed me, feed me, right? You want to get out of that, especially if you're going to scale. Staff own, count, ever important word, and report what they did. Here's what I did. That's the next stage. At least get yourself there. How many people are there right now? Your staff is reporting what they did. Okay, so we need a thrust there. All right, at least get your staff to do that. Here's what I did for my department. We're going to break this down by department here in a minute, but it is key to do that. You looking at your numbers and like thinking there's some sort of win by telling your staff and not them owning that is going to be a problem for you long term. And maybe it's not when the staff is 5, it's going to be a huge problem when you're at 25. You're not going to make it. Stage 3, staff own, count, and report what they did. Here's what I did. And stage 4, staff own, count, and report what they did. What's coming up next? So we had 38 new patients last week. We already have 32 on the books for next week. We have a workshop on Tuesday night that is fully booked with 40 people registered, 40 confirmed, whatever Heather will report there. By the way, our overflow on Thursday night, we have 37 people coming to that. That's what this looks like. Heather is doing that. I'm going to repeat this with Stacy, what she said. Came to what was that, 3 summers ago, Stacy? Came into my office, watched me the staff meeting. I don't run our staff meeting, Joe runs it. He's been our clinical director there since July of 2012. So Joe's running the meeting. We're just sitting at this huge table. I don't really say anything other than share one patient success story that supports our long-term vision. I think it was somebody canceled surgery or something like that, and it was just a patient win that supports our vision. That's now become the BHAG. And she looked at me and she said, "You don't do," Stacy expletive, "you don't do shit," is what she said. Or you didn't do shit, I think is what you said. My staff laughed, chuckled a little bit, and I said, what were you expecting after everything calmed down? And I said, "What were you expecting?" And she said, "I just thought that you would, like that I'm doing this in my staff meeting." No, like I'm not talking at my staff anymore. And you want to get to that same point as well. All right? How can a staff member help an owner change? What I did do in the 2 years that I worked for somebody else, I would just constantly give them books. Who Moved My Cheese was popular at the time. I remember gifting that. And like I didn't really know, I knew that what we were doing wasn't right, but I didn't know how to help them any other way. And I knew that I wasn't going to educate them. Now, there's a way to have crucial conversations. There's actually a book on it. You just want to walk through that. And what I ended up doing in the end was like, "Hey, here's what I see. I don't think this is going to work out." They kind of, like that was the first time the siren went off, even though that conversation had been happening for 6 months. And I said, like, "Here's what we have to do. That's not happening. I'm looking at past behavior. What do you think we should do here?" And they sent me up to another clinic, and I resigned. Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking for maybe certain wording
Yep.
on how to get people to buy into this. PTs sometimes are overwhelmed with all the work they have to do.
Yep.
And so when I was doing that intake form, delegating, more to the patient versus the PT.
Yep.
But you're right, the PT needs to be more active in it. So when you have a staff of PTs that are feeling overwhelmed, they feel like they have too much paperwork. Now I'm going to ask them, which I totally agree, they should know this. How do I get them to buy into it? How do I get
Okay.
them?
So you have 9 PTs, if I remember correctly. Okay. Are you a staff member at her office?
They're front office.
What you're about to hear, you do not repeat. There's a PT in your group that you're probably carry with you the most.
Yes.
Okay. So they have a name. Don't say it.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say there's a PT in your group that is probably the loudest. What you do is I would sit down with them in the group of PTs and say, okay, show me what you did. And then you don't say anything. You have them report what they're doing. Start with new patients and visits. Then you can add in the other metrics that we talked about and that we're going to get to here in a second that all of our PTs share, but you have to start somewhere. Show me what you're doing. Because many times what they're doing is bravado or it's a distraction to, hey, I'm not really that good back here. Okay, so pretty true. Show me what you're doing. Show us what you're doing. Everybody goes around the room and it's going to be really, really clear right away. To some degree, it might correct. It might blow up. There's a million different things that can happen, but you start there. You give them some of the true accountability and responsibility rather than you carrying it. Okay, Matt?
Are there any exceptions to that? So there might be some fairly complex billing analysis that we do to determine perhaps active units for a Medicare patient, for example.
Yep.
We can't let EMR has to go to billing.
Well, the PT, and I'll show you how we break down every department here in a second, but realize that when you're having, like you as a business owner, you can't keep track of 200 metrics every day. We did count at one point, I forget what it was, 71 or whatever we were tracking, 130, whatever the number is. You can't look at that many. You as an owner can probably look at 5, right? Big metrics. However, if my heart rate, so if my blood pressure is 158 over 106, what are they going to do? They're going to look at a lot more variables. You need to be thinking about your business the same way. So I know for us, we track income. That is what Tracy, our billing department manager, reports every single week. If income is, let's say, 43,000, and we expect it to be 55,000 for the week, I say, hey, what happened, right? It may be in the staff meeting, it may be off to the side. Joe's really good at doing this now, and then you swim upstream.
I was talking with an owner about marketing and specifically marketing a de novo clinic, and I wrote out processes that we have in our marketing system. I go through, and this is simply a checklist, but I go through all 5 new patient pathways, reactivations, word of mouth referral, physician or professional licensed referral, partner referrals, and then cold traffic marketing. And I laid out all of our processes and what that looks like. If you'd like a copy of that, simply click on the link. You can download a copy so you know what a marketing system looks like that addresses all 5 new patient pathways. It's going to give you confidence whether you're opening a new clinic or you have an established clinic and you're just looking to fill the schedules of your existing therapist, or you're just looking for consistency in your new patient flow. This is how we think about, this is how we've evolved over 20 plus years working with now over 2,000 private practice owners from all over the world, not only all 50 states in the US, but 11 countries internationally, physios in 11 countries internationally as well. This is what I use in my own private practice. So if you like that sheet, it's absolutely free. You can click on the link, download it, and get a checklist of the marketing processes that we have in our marketing system.
Then we're looking at our total accounts receivable, our AR buckets over 60 days. So we break it up into Medicare, personal insurance, and private insurance. Is there something goofy going on here that we're not keeping track of, and our billing team isn't working our AR the way that they normally work it? So yes, there are more variables, but there are key ones that you're looking for at each department. So you get a general sense of what's going on. Does that make sense? Yep.
So you talked about staff counting and reporting what they did. If our software can pull this information out, can they can use that and just report it, so they have to own, I saw 3 new patients last week.
Awesome question. So if you can generate a report, when I go into our staff meeting, I have a printout of everything that they're going to tell me. I'm verifying that. Like I know where we're at. I know that we did 38 new patients. Like I have those numbers beforehand. I don't know if it was Malcolm Gladwell or Charles Duhigg or maybe both wrote about this, but there's something about them handling the numbers that makes it tangible. That you want them to think with the number. If you're just like in the feeding mode, or you're posting it up, like let's say in the break room so everybody can see it, not nearly as effective as Heather or Mitch or Tracy or Debbie in our staff meetings standing up and saying, hey, here's what we did last week. So there's a running joke. We're at 100% copays collected, okay? And they just missed a week. It was like the first week that they missed, and it was 99% or 98%. So they missed one copay at the time of the visit. She had to say that. The act that she had to say that is so much more significant than just saying or just posting that number, because it actually became like, oh my gosh, you missed, and we made a big joke out of it. Like, you have to make it tangible. You giving them a report, or
Can they pull it, like, I give them the steps so they can pull it up?
oh yeah, our therapists track it every single day. So they have a printout of all the patients they're seeing that day, and they say, okay, I saw 2 new patients today, I saw this many visits, paid visits, I saw this many free screens, this many people converted. Like, they do all that every single day, and then at the end of the week, the aide typically, Heather, is that true? The aide helps tabulate the metrics for the PTA, okay. Whoops. PTA helps tabulate all the metrics before the staff meeting. But yeah, it's tangible, they're holding it, happen, yep.
So do I lose any value when all that for them, seeing it, it's not tangible to them until the last, when they're about to report it?
Well, it's better than
Right.
the alternative.
Right.
So it's at least a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Do I lose any value, you think?
I'd have them look at. I mean, they should be aware. They're going to get more aware the first time that they have to stand up and say a metric that doesn't make sense. Why did that happen? Then it's your role to say, hey, what happened there? And now they have to have those metrics. Okay. You should have a film, Delane, of our staff meeting. I'm trying to, actually, I don't think we stand up anymore because we got rid of the table. Yeah, the way that we sit now, the structure of our room, everybody just I'm probably just in the habit of saying standing up because that's what we used to do. Good catch. So, okay, the owner observes what's going on. So so do you see how they're starting to future pace? Here's how many visits we have scheduled next week already. Next week looks really good. Or, wow, we just had this major screw up and all these patients were discharged. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. All right, so some metrics, self-limiting beliefs really quick. I don't have time to track metrics. I'm already too busy. I think we're beyond that in this room, but we actually hear that a lot. If it's not production, typically seeing patients, I don't want to do it. So I'm too busy working. I'm too busy seeing patients. I don't have any time to track. I already know, fill in the blank, what's wrong, where we're at, what we're doing. This is pretty common. Don, I can't see that. Is that 5? Great. I don't want my staff to know. Another one. So how to establish metrics and KPIs. Metrics, complete an accountability chart. We're going to do that here in 5 minutes. Or other organization of people or areas in your business. You have to have some idea of how many people are in your business and who's owning what. We're going to do that next. Maybe. Over the shoulder. Nice. Look at each individual area separately. What people are producing that contributes to your entire practice. There should be... Anybody feel like your metrics are in silos? New patients don't feel related to the overall practice. Finance doesn't feel like they're related to the overall practice. Or do you already do a pretty good job of painting like the whole flow of your business and how it's all related? How many people feel like they're struggling there? How many people everything flows smoothly and the receptionist who's collecting copays understands how that is relative to helping your marketing and collecting testimonials and getting more patients in? Everybody else is in the middle? So yeah, there's a certain flow that you want to set up. And again, that's your role as the CEO to help everybody see how they contribute. So they can't necessarily control visits if they're sitting at the receptionist desk and they're responsible for collecting copays directly, but indirectly, there is something there. Because if they have that area controlled, it's going to set a tone, set a certain culture with your patients coming in that is going to help them. It is related. If you're struggling with that, just let me know and we can do more training on that. But that's something that you want to do over and over. Paint the big vision. Here's how this is all related. We're all on the same boat. You can't have a front office desk person who's not keeping track of metrics, who's bombing on collections of copays or appointment reminders or whatever it is, and not have that affect the rest of the organization. I can't have cirrhosis of the liver, but yet I'm healthy. Okay? It's that same idea. And then make a list, and we're going to do that right now. So kill, keep, combine. Has anybody ever been through that? It's an exercise where once we make a list, let's say we made a list of 30 different metrics that we're going to keep track of for marketing. We're going to keep combining until we get to the main ones. I'll show you how to do that here in a second. And sample exercise for one position. We're just going to move on to how to establish this. Actually, I'm going to go through really fast. I will get you a copy of these slides, how to establish metrics and KPIs. One, what are the 1 to 3 metrics each area should focus on? You don't want 17. You don't want 30. You don't want large numbers. You want 1 to 3 key metrics that each person is sharing. You can get more detailed, but for the most part, you want 1 to 3. These should match the 1 to 3 metrics you and your leadership team focus on in each area to let you know how you're doing. Again, the vital signs. So if you know that you're going to a 200 visit a week practice, then you should be able to trickle down what do our new patients need to look like from internal marketing, what do our new patients need to look like from external marketing, what do our visits per team need to look like, what's our average visit per new patient need to look like, what's our revenue need to look like, income, everything else across the board. Attendance rate, etc. Final list should be a total of 15 items on a dashboard. Again, we track it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then annually. Anybody compare year to year? Not quarter one of 2018 to quarter one of 2017. I mean like where you're looking at long term, so you have like the last 13 years of practice all mapped out. Great. Pretty powerful exercise? Yeah. You really get to see what you're doing. Because sometimes what's the saying about losing the forest for the trees? Like we're too close to what we're doing on a daily basis. We don't have enough distance. When you take a look at that, 5 years in a row, 10 years in a row, and take a look at what you're doing, you get to see that maybe you're not that bad of an owner after all, right? Give yourself a little bit of grace there. All right, let me pull up this chart for you. Everybody's going to get a copy of this or a format of it. So I went through, and by the way, Carl put all this into clinic metrics. I'm not going to have time to roll that out for you, but I'll show you how I look at it. So receptionist, key metrics here are appointments scheduled, appointments attended. If you have a different nomenclature, that's fine. Percentage of appointments kept, which is a KPI. Percentage of copays collected, KPI for us. And then predictive, so what's upcoming, appointments scheduled next week. That's also a KPI. So Deb in our office usually is reporting for reception, and she's reporting those 3 KPIs at the workshop, at the staff meeting. Next up, and by the way, in this document I broke these up so you can see a receptionist, internal marketing, etc. I'm just going to hang out on this one. Next up is internal marketing, so that's repeat patients. This is Mitch's area, referred by others. And then the other KPI there is number of new patients coming in next week. Obviously we can only report total new patients next week. It's impossible for Heather or Mitch to know where they're coming from until they're actually coming through. And but the advanced one, income per plan of care, we do not track that relative to internal marketing. But that's a really good idea that we haven't executed yet. In particular because Mitch handles our back-end cash pay services for people that are coming through. So finance, KPIs there are income, accounts receivable over 60 days, and production. Here's what we build out. This is what we got back in. Everybody that's taking pictures, you're going to get this. Exactly. You can take pictures, that's great. But you're going to get all this. And there is a handout for them, Dawn, that has this on. Yep. Great. So accounts receivable. So this is what Tracy will report on. Actually, in our staff meeting, the only thing that she's doing right now is income. On my sheet, I get to see AR over 60 days and then production as well. Then finance or expense, whatever that looks like for you. You're looking at total expenses. I've gotten really lazy with this. We only do this once a month. I just personally, I have so much bandwidth. So we do a once a month finance meeting. And I look at income, expenses, what the profitability is, what we're going to pay out in bonus. So expenses is a KPI, and then how much cash we have. So how much money is in our reserve, how much money is in our operating account, and then what bills we have coming up. Yep. For the finance, we just say, here's the total income, here's the total expense, This is what we earned in profitability, and then this is what we're paying out in bonus. It's very global. Show last 3 months of income and expense, or be willing to share it. Yep. We've gone through all of your staff isn't going to want to see that every month. It's not a driver for us. If somebody says, like, how are we doing this production, or why didn't we do this, or whatever it is, like, it's available. So if anybody would ever say, I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now, Blaine. I'm not like, the huge scoreboard is not fun. I doubt your staff is driven by financials for your company. They're most likely driven by impact and helping people in the community. So in our staff meeting, that's what we drive. All of this is available. Me as an owner, though, that's what I'm looking at. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it comes down to when you start really having individuals who want to see the whole picture, and
Yep.
how they get incentivized off of that. So that's, basically rolling it out to a group of individuals.
I'll show you the exact spreadsheet that we use. Actually, if I had time here, I'd call it up, but I'll post it in the PT experts group for you. So it's just called a monthly snapshot, and it shows 10 major, just got it to somebody, TJ. 10 major categories of expenses, what the total income was, and then shows a line for profitability. And it's just a running total, and it's easy. And by the way, you don't have to share you don't have to share like your salary or anything like that. Like, we just have one line that says total employee benefit, and that includes pay and healthcare and everything, 401k or simple IRA matching, whatever you're doing there, all lumped into one line. Yep, very long answer, shortened for you. Read Jack Stack, Great Game of Business. If more of your staff has an owner mentality and accountability and responsibility in their area, it's going to allow you to focus more on scaling your business. Chuck Felder every 4 years does a benchmark study. He was part of the original KM course that we did. There was a module in that he did with Carl. I would use what he has. They're still available. They're still tracked. I'm just not focusing on them. So KPIs are metrics that you're paying more attention to. Excuse me. PTs, PTAs, aides, primarily do visits there. I'll give you exactly right now what all of our therapists have expanded to reporting. So they report visits, attendance percentage, new patients that they've seen, free screens they've seen, free screens that have converted over to new patients, discharges, discharge MIAs or drop-offs. That'll come and go based on if we see too much drop-off, then we put it back in. But for the most part, last couple quarters, I don't think I've heard too many people reporting that. Everything's going smooth. Free checks they see, which is like a 10-minute, 6-month appointment where somebody comes in and they just get objective measures. Occasionally, Dan does this the most. He'll mix in, if he had like 5 free checks on the week and 3 of those people scheduled an appointment, he'll report on that. Predictive, here's how many appointments we have next week. Here's how many new patients we have next week. Next week looks really good. It has evolved into that. The only thing that I really pay attention to, unless I'm hearing like a red flag as they're going through, is the visit number. So as an owner, I'm just paying attention to visits. External marketing, a number of new patients from doctors, referred by doctors or referral sources, nurse practitioners, PAs in your area, number of new patients from external marketing events, workshops, health fairs, anything like Google ads if you're doing that, and then predictive, number of new patients next week. Blaine. There's like a weird acoustic thing going on. Go ahead. Yeah, so until our therapists became partners, production wasn't on the radar. So the number of units that they were billing out or anything like that they weren't really thinking like that. And we just had a tough time like getting them to see that. We've had 1 or 2 over the years that's where our production bonus comes from, and they'll want to see what that looks like. They usually want to see it once a month. It's not something they're going to report on an ongoing basis. But we just found it, we were getting like lost in the weeds there for something that they really weren't worried about.
I was talking with an owner about marketing and specifically marketing a de novo clinic, and I wrote out processes that we have in our marketing system. I go through, and this is simply a checklist, but I go through all 5 new patient pathways, reactivations, word of mouth referral, physician or professional licensed referral, partner referrals, and then cold traffic marketing, and I laid out all of our processes and what that looks like. If you'd like a copy of that, simply click on the link. You can download a copy so you know what a marketing system looks like that addresses all 5 new patient pathways. It's going to give you confidence whether you're opening a new clinic or you have an established clinic and you're just looking to fill the schedules of your existing therapist, or you're just looking for consistency in your new patient flow. This is how we think about, this is how we've evolved over 20 plus years, working with now over 2,000 private practice owners from all over the world, not only all 50 states in the US, but 11 countries internationally, physios in 11 countries internationally as well. This is what I use in my own private practice. So if you like that sheet, it's absolutely free. You can click on the link, download it, and get a checklist of the marketing processes that we have in our marketing system.